Welcome to the 62nd broadcast of the T-ROH show. This is your host, Keith. Got John with me.
Good
And
morning, folks.
morning. What we're doing here is I've got a couple of things we need to talk about today. Uh, Extremely interesting program for myself, this one is, because some interesting um, developments have come up. There was, number one, I think Alex Jones was getting sued by Georgetown University on behalf of some guy, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't really matter what the subject matter is. And he starts talking about Jesuits and all that kind of thing. Well, lo and behold, just before that came out, I was doing some research on the same subject matter of Georgetown. So we're going to show you. I'm not going to make this show about what's going on with him. What I'm going to do is I want to tell everybody what's going on with Georgetown. But first, because what you're going to hear tonight is it's really going to blow your mind. It's going to change the way you see the country. Now, the first item of business I would like to cover is the Second Amendment. That they keep saying that they're coming after the Second Amendment. They're coming after the Second Amendment. They're going after the guns and blah, 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 blah. Now, this is what you call social engineering. Okay? They keep going after the Second Amendment and they attach the Second Amendment with guns. So when people say we need to repeal the Second Amendment, that does not give them the right to go after guns. The fact that you own a gun is not hinged on the Second Amendment to a corporate constitution, corporate charter, or whatever it is. That right is not attached to a Second Amendment in any way, shape, or form. That right is a basic natural right to own property. But what they're doing is they're doing social engineering to make people believe that somehow some Second Amendment is attached to gun ownership, and it has nothing to do with either one, because that actually dealt with militias. So if you were a militia, it had nothing to do with the people. But for some reason, people believe that, through social engineering and constant repetitive BS over this Second Amendment thing, it has nothing to do with the right to have to own guns. It says bear arms and militia. Okay, so that has nothing to do with the people themselves. Your right to own a gun is the right to own property and the intangible property right to the gun or whatever you want to own. That's just property rights. That has nothing to do with anything else. So please realize that you're being socially engineered to believe that if somehow they start passing laws and restricting and all this other stuff, what they're doing is they're taking your property rights away. It has nothing to do with gun rights under a Second Amendment. So just to let you know that that's a social engineering job that they're pulling on you. Now we're going to go to the origin of where it's all coming from. So I was doing some research this week, and there has always been this huge issue with 1871. The what we call it, the District of Columbia Act, I believe they called it. And I wanted to go through some of this stuff with you because people believe and have been told that the District of Columbia Act, Corporate Act, or whatever they call it here, and let me get the actual title: District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871. Okay, people believe that, or have been told, and without even looking it up, they don't go look at it, that somehow a federal constitution has been converted, or a municipality was created within the District of Columbia and replaced or turned the Constitution of the United States into a corporation and somehow changed the of to for, or for to of, and all that. Okay, that's not really what happened. So I wanted to cover this evening, and you really need to go look at the act and not just believe what people are telling you. So here it is. Here, I got a copy of the act itself. Went through the whole thing. It's only about 12 pages. I was looking for a specific wording to connect to something else, and actually I ended up going in a different direction and found more than what I was looking for. So basically, it's just a municipal corporation that was created in the city of Washington, D.C. Okay, I'll make you dizzy here. For expenses under the Neutrality Act, 20,000, blah, 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 goes in here. Then it goes, it says that all in part of the territory of the United States included within the limits of the District of Columbia, B, and the same is hereby created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name it is hereby constituted a body corporate for municipal purposes, and may contract and be contracted with, sue and be sued, plead and be impleaded, have a seal and exercise their powers of municipal corporation, not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States and the provisions of this act. So you see, it did not replace anything. It's right here. Okay, the Constitution is still a corporate charter, no matter which way you look at it. What they did was they created a municipal corporation within the District of Columbia. Okay, so that part was not true when people keep saying, well, it turned into a corporation and now we're in a court. That's not, it's always been a corporation, folks. It's always been a corporate charter since 1789. So that's never changed. It says the executive power and authority in and over the said District of Columbia shall be vested in a governor who shall be appointed by the president. So there's no elections there. By and with the advice and consent of the Senate. That is a communist municipality. They're appointed. And who shall hold office for 4 years and until a successor shall be appointed and qualified. The governor shall be a citizen of and shall have resided within said district 12 months before his appointment and have qualifications of an elector. He may grant pardons and respites for offenses against the laws of said district enacted by the legislative assembly thereof. He shall commission all officers who shall be elected and appointed, and the office under the laws of the said district enacted, and blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on. Okay, and you can read this. Just get under the District of Columbia Act and just go read it for yourself. There was one specific thing I thought was interesting. It says Sunday's accepted here. That's a connection. Okay, so they always take Sunday off. Now that's dealing with sun worshipers and or Roman Catholics. Okay. Now you can go in, and if you start looking at it, a lot of it is just a basic setup and a framework for the city itself. And then this is the weird part. And it be it further enacted that legislative power and authority of said district shall be vested in the legislative body and herein provided. The assembly shall consist of a council and a house of delegates. The council shall consist of 11 members, of whom shall be residents of the city of Georgetown, 2 of them, and 2 residents of the county outside the cities of Washington and Georgetown, who shall be appointed by the president, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, who shall have the qualification of voters as hereinafter prescribed, 5 of whom shall be first appointed for the first term of 1 year, and 6 appointed. And this is how they stagger it. They stagger the appointments. And then it says, and the members of the council and of the House of Delegates shall reside in and be inhabitants of the districts from which they are appointed or elected respectively. Okay, so the purpose of the first election, and it talks about the Supreme Court of the District of Columbia shall designate the districts for members of the House of Delegates, appoint a board of registration and persons to superintend the election and it goes into there, but they're appointed. That's the weird part. Now, that the Legislative Assembly shall have the power to divide that portion of the district not included in the corporate limits of Washington or Georgetown into townships, not exceeding three, and create township officers and prescribe the duties thereof, but all township officers shall be elected by the people of the townships respectively. See how this went into a completely different direction? Instead of setting up states, they started setting up townships. You know what I mean? Anyways, we can move on with this. And they talked about all that all male citizens of the United States above the age of 21 years who shall have been actual residents of said district for 3 months prior to the passage of this act, and then it goes on from there. Okay. Now, many people believe that this act turned the District of Columbia into a municipal corporation, and that everybody became residents of the District of Columbia corporation directly under Congress, and all the restrictions of the holy 1789 Constitution were thrown out the window. Not true. This actually had nothing to do with the people itself. And it also, in their oath, it says, they solemnly swear or affirm that they will support the Constitution of the United States and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which they are about to enter. And it goes into a lot of things. So it's still there from this particular act. And man, they sold that to everybody. They sold it was a country, and I think there was a group called RUSA that was trying to do this, call themselves presidents. They're the organic government, constitution, and all this other stuff. Guys, it had nothing to do with that. So I'll show you what it did have something to do with. What it was actually setting up. Okay, I went and found this old book, and it was called the Anglo-American Encyclopedia and Dictionary, and it had all the terms, you know, that you were looking for, and it was done in 1904. So I started looking up stuff because it had some of the terms I was looking for in it. So I went ahead and downloaded it and started looking at the whole thing. Found some interesting stuff. Here we go. All right. Now it says Georgetown, a former city in the District of Columbia on the Potomac River, since 1871, part of the city of Washington. It is the seat of Georgetown University, a Jesuit institution with noted astronomical observatory. Georgetown is one of the greatest fish markets in the country and has a large coast trade. See Washington. That's the city. Now, did y'all miss that? Georgetown University, an educational institution in Washington, D.C., founded in 1789 under the auspices of the Roman Catholic Church. Reported at the close of 1900, professors and instructors, 114 students, 735 volumes in the library, 85,300 productive funds, 47,000 grounds and buildings valued, blah, blah, blah. And there it is. Okay, but what did you miss? District of Columbia on the Potomac River since 1871, part of the city of Washington. It, meaning the District of Columbia, is the seat of Georgetown University, a Jesuit institution. Okay, now we'll get back to that in a second. Here's what a seat of government is. A term that is used to describe a county seat or the capital of a state or the federal government. There's also a couple of other ones. I mean, you can go in and look around, okay, and look at a seat of government is defined in Brewer's Politics, the building complex of buildings or the city from which a government exercises its authority. From which a government exercises its authority. Let me say that again. Let's go. I know people don't like Wikipedia, but The seat of government is the building complex of buildings or the city from which a government exercises its authority. So, building complex buildings or the city from which a government exercises its authority. From that city.
That means Georgetown University then is a city that the city government's operating from.
Well, let's look at that in a different light. Hold on one second. That means it is the seat of Georgetown University. So Georgetown University is the government, and the District of Columbia is the seat from which this government here exercises its authority. Am I right on that?
He can twist it around like that. You're right.
So it is the seat of Georgetown University. Okay,
Yep.
now let's go back and look at that again. It says the building complex of buildings or a city from which a government exercises its authority. That's the seat of government. It says, or the city from which a government exercises its authority. Now, let's go back and read this again. District of Columbia on the Potomac River since 1871, part of the city of Washington. It is the seat of Georgetown University, a Jesuit institution with a noted astronomical observatory. Can we say deep state, folks? And now you understand why Georgetown University is suing? I thought I was kind of seeing things. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. This comes from 1904, right? So I looked around again, and it was a Hartford, a city, capital of the state of Connecticut, port of entry and county seat of Hartford County on the Connecticut River, and on the New York, New Haven, and Hartford, and New England and New York railroads. Important commercial manufacturing city is noted for many insurance companies. The city is lighted by electricity, has waterworks system with 150 miles of mains owned by the city, 150 miles of streets, and blah, blah, blah. It is the seat of Trinity College. Hartford Congregational Theological Seminary, American Asylum for the Deaf, Insane Retreat, Old People's Home in Wadsworth's Anthemium, containing the Connecticut Historical Society and Hartford Public Library, and Watkinson's Reference Library and the Watkinson's Juvenile Asylum. It says the Roman Catholic Cathedral, St. Joseph's, and many elegant churches, a large free public library, and several valuable libraries connected with the educational institutions of the city. The new State House, an imposing structure completed in 1880 at a cost of 3.1 million. Now, it was 1871 that they did District of Columbia, right? This was done a little bit later. The old State House, now used as the City Hall, and the rooms for the Hartford Historical Society, contains many interesting relics and antiquities and blah, 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 blah. But here we are again. It is the seat of Trinity College. So are we saying that Trinity College is the government? And they use the city as the seat of their authority?
That's what it says.
That's what it reads. And the same thing is with Georgetown University. And it's all connected to the same people. Now, where are all the Antifa folks in all the universities?
Their own campuses.
Now we kind of put this together a long time ago. There was a guy that came along and he was, I don't know, he sounded like CIA all the time. He was well connected, and this is in I think about 2013 or so. And he was acting like he was trying to help us, but he actually wasn't. But he started saying he offered to us. He says if you guys make the government of the United States of America a 501c3, the Air Force will allow you to come into, it was an Alabama university, and connect into the mainframe to where you guys could go ahead and connect in. I said, well, turning it into a 501c3 kind of defeats the whole purpose here, doesn't it? And he goes, yeah, it kind of does. I said, what you guys have set up here and what it looks like to me is that the universities are all city states. I said, could they be possibly connected to the Vatican? And he didn't say anything about that. He did say something about Jesuits, but he didn't say anything else like that about that. This is the first time I've actually found evidence of it. It was just a hypothesis at the time.
That brings up another interesting thing too. Remember 4 or 5 years ago when they started moving all the gold bullion into the universities for storage?
Yeah. Those were city states of the Vatican.
Yep.
You see, the Vatican set up the District of Columbia as a municipality so that he could turn all of the universities into city states and control the education. You can control all the money. Okay, that was a false statement when he said you control the money. You care not who makes the laws. That's a complete false statement. If you control the education, you care not who makes the laws. Knowledge is much more powerful than money, because somebody can throw all kinds of money and have all kinds of stuff, and he can be rich and he can start doing as much as he wants to do against you. But if you're smarter than he is, you're going to beat him, no matter which way you look at it. That means that Georgetown University, a Jesuit institution, are the ones that are making all laws. All of the power is coming out of Georgetown University, which is connected to who? CIA, FBI, Homeland Security. It's connected to everything. They're the ones that created all of it. Now, this goes all the way back to the Vatican, where Francis, when he said he was going to get rid of fake news about a month ago, all of a sudden, he does a stupid move because he thinks people are stupid and won't put it together, that know what's going on, that are in the know, that when Georgetown University filed the lawsuit, that how would you not connect that to the Pope if you know their history, where Georgetown University came from. So Georgetown, which was the Jesuit town, became Georgetown University, just under a different name, and took control of the District of Columbia. And when they did that, it's a whole other animal, completely different animal. Okay, so what I did was I had to kind of, I said, is my head right? What am I thinking here? So what I started doing was taking a look around, and I found the origin of the word university. Okay. In Latin, in Latin of the Middle Ages, universitas or citatis was one term for a society or a company. The word university evolved from that meaning to refer to an academic society, if you will. It's its own societies. So Francis, or former popes, and through the Catholic Roman Catholics, all started their own city states over here from universities. And then they put in metros so that people will sue the metro, not realizing that the edicts that the metro is doing and the laws that are being made are coming from the university that's associated to that particular metro. Now, if you what you were doing was legal, you wouldn't have to hide that. What he would do is he would just come out and say, "Oh yeah, all the universities are now city states, and all the laws come from them, and I run them." But he doesn't do that. I'm talking about Francis. What he does is he hides it, and when you're hiding it, that means you're doing something wrong, and what you're doing is illegal. Now, bring that to where you have the Rockefeller Foundation, and then you have the Rothschilds, and you have all those guys. Okay, the Crown running the City of London and all that. He's running all the wars over there, but who's he doing it on behalf of? The Vatican, three city state empire. And the president of the United States is, within the District of Columbia, is appointing all of those people. So he very well knows what's going on, and he knows what the Georgetown University is, and he knows what all of the universities are, every single one of them. Which kind of makes sense that you have the Dutch that came in. The Dutch are basically what you're looking at is a depository for all of Vatican assets. That's the Bank of New York Mellon, 20 to 26 trillion. It's traded on the market, and they always win, right? House always wins. And you have the English over there that are run by the Crown, and they've been working with the Dutch for a long time. Then you have the Vatican working with the Crown, so they're all working together. They created an 1871 municipal corporation within Washington, D.C., make Georgetown University, so nobody would ever suspect anything. Create that as a city state. All the laws come from that particular university through the representatives that are appointed by the President of the United States, and you got yourself a whole country takeover. You can make the whole country the Vatican or Roman Catholic. Putting that together, everybody that ever challenges the belief system of the Roman Catholics are always accused of being a cult. And lo and behold, go to the last, broadcast A of the 10th, special edition number 10. Look down, and there's a guy that asked if we're a cult. Because what I did was I read the history of the Muslim belief or Islam on that particular episode. The very first thing they do is, are you a cult? Well, a cult is as defined as one leader, and everybody, he claims to be the father of all families, of all the families. Pretty much, if you look at the definition of a cult, just go look it up. You look at the Catholic Church, they're set up the exact same way. So that's called self-projection. So let's go back to the offshore trust, Internal Revenue Trust. Now we know, folks, who the actual beneficiary of the offshore internal revenue trusts are. The beneficiary is that office of the Pope. He's the one that's collecting all the taxes. There was a book called Pandora's Box, and it specifies in there, but it wasn't connecting the dots as to how it was done. It was actually connecting the dots through the railroads, where the railroads would do the tax collection, and the Pope would get like a check per year that had like 40 zeros. And the authors of the book said, I don't even know how much that is, or what you even call that, 40 zeros per year. Now, with that kind of money, you can run wars in different countries through the universities. See, this isn't the first time it's happened. It's happened all over the world. Same exact scenario, same exact formula. So the EU is actually being run by all the universities within the EU. Any laws that appointed group or that the appointed seat pass, they're getting it from the universities. It's their seat of government. Same thing with Iraq. Same thing, Afghanistan, poppy seeds, the whole deal. Okay, it's all roads are leading back to Rome, folks. And that's not a pun. I'm not trying to make uh, light of that. All roads are leading back to Rome.
And Benedict XVI was Catholic. And then when he was replaced with Francis, Francis is Jesuit, the Black Pope,
Hmm.
which puts him in charge of all the universities.
Right. So, folks, the people to actually go after that are committing all these crimes against you, the Roman Catholics are doing, they're all taking their edicts from the universities.
And the Catholics evidently is the religious arm of it, and the Jesuit is the governing arm of it.
Hmm. So, how many Jesuits in the NCAA? You ever watched a basketball game and they'll keep playing, right? And one team will get a bunch of fouls and the other team doesn't. Well, come on, who's paying who? It's through the referees. The referees are being paid. The referees can actually make a game, can make a team win or lose if they want to. All they got to do is start calling fouls on them and no fouls on the other. They can make a team win. It's not a problem.
And who controlled the referee?
That's right.
The
Universities.
mafia. The mafia the mafia, and the mafia is basically the universe. Back to the universities again.
Uh huh. And how much money is connected to the, I believe it's the NCAA?
I have no idea.
I mean, they're all connected.
Yes,
Everything is connected. It's a huge network,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of money involved. So you have pro ball connected to the universities, so and which is connected to the Jesuits, which is connected to um, the Pope. And I don't believe that you can become a general in the military unless you're Jesuit. I've heard that before. That's just speculation on my part, but I've heard that you cannot be a general in the military unless you're Jesuit. You can't be high up in the Pentagon. And
I can't comment on that because I don't know.
and the Pentagon, by the way, is set up and made. I saw this the other day. It's the way it's created and actually built. It was supposed to be New Jerusalem, believe it or not. That the Masons built it to the inch, okay, to the quarter inch. I mean, they were pretty accurate with it, and they believed that if they could build a perfect building, that would be good enough for God to return. So there it is. The best way to do this is to this government declared independence from the Vatican City government. It's a communist government, by the way. 2012, I believe, it was 2012 or 13. You have to go. We declared independence, and ever since then, or actually in the last 2 or 3, 4 months, we've been attacked by more than you can imagine, and they're all Jesuits, and they're all within um, uh, the Roman Catholics and all that crap. And now that you know in we call it broadcast A of the special edition number 10, now that you know where Islam comes from, now it all starts coming together. Why Muslims are getting special treatment from the Roman Catholics, and because they created them, they're the basic worker bees to uh, to support the Roman Catholic Church. So you get a bunch of Muslims in there, and they start attacking what they call uh, what they call Christians. In other words, Christian churches that are not a part of the Roman Catholic Church. Those Christian churches start looking for refuge and become a part of the Roman Catholic Church, which brings in what? Money, revenue, all that kind of stuff. And they are essentially brought in under the Roman Catholic protection from being attacked by the Muslims.
And you know they're gathering their forces too,
Mm-hmm.
because the Knight Templar just joined with the Knights of Malta within the last few days or so.
Hmm. And then you have what was it? Roman Catholics running universities. Many, if not all, are Roman Catholics running the universities, and either part of the Masons or one of those groups within the whole mess, connected somewhere. The Knights of the Holy Sepulchre and all those guys. So there you go. That's the end of the story, folks. Now you know what's going on. The Roman Catholic Church is engaged in domestic warfare against civilians, which are war crimes. And their seats of government are implementing the laws of the universities against the people as city states. And that's where it's coming from. So that's 90% of the battle. 90% of the battle is understanding it's where it's coming from. Who's doing it? And that's where you got 10% no peace and 90% peace, because you know where it's coming from. You know that with the guy with the uniform on, he's either a Mason or a Roman Catholic or both. You know who he is. And they're operating a domestic warfare campaign through social engineering. And that's why I brought up social engineering in the beginning of the program here. And they're committing war crimes every day right in front of you. 99% of the problems that we see, people coming and declaring residency, they really somehow like us because they attach themselves to us for some reason. We're trying to get them over to their states, but they're going. We're not here for like a refuge. We're here to get you back to the states of the union, and so you can start reestablishing your states with a permanent population. That's what we're trying to get done. Okay, so what's happening is it's kind of difficult to explain. We're getting hit with people that we know for a fact are either part of the Roman Catholic organization, either that or Muslims, or Jesuits, or who, it could be a number of any of those kind of groups, knights and all this kind of thing. And the reason why it is because they believe that if you're not a Roman Catholic, you don't go to heaven. That's what they believe. And if that's the case, and I kind of don't believe that, because I don't think the Roman Catholics decide who goes to heaven, who doesn't. Especially when we know their origins coming from Zoroastrianism. And we know the city wherein they were first recognized as a form of religion. And we can go into that later on. We had the whole history of it. And it had to do with two brothers. One was a king, and the one that recognized the priest was hung upside down by his brother. That's where the whole hung upside down thing came from. And he was crucified for recognizing it. And if I cannot remember the city at the moment. I'll have to get back to you on it. I'll go into that whole story. It's an interesting story. But that information was on the Reign of the Heaven Society Temple website. It was a wiki type site that we had. It got attacked by 45,000 um, hits within one day. And the first thing that the server uh, provider said, service provider said, was, "You guys have violated the law." That's what they said to us. I go, "What are you talking about?" So somebody else attacks the website with 45,000 hits of people becoming wanting to, trying to get members. You know how they do that? It's like a program. Then and we broke the law. So that's when I knew we were onto something, because somebody within the um, service or server provider happened to be Roman Catholic, and they didn't like what we had discovered, and they didn't like what we had put on there. So they figured out a way to get it taken down. We still have a database, and we still have the information, but they made sure that that sucker went down. Especially when we went to the origins of the Catholic Church, they didn't like that. So you don't go to heaven unless you're Roman Catholic, but yet at the same time, we also know your origins and where you guys came from. Where all religions on earth came from Zoroastrianism, which is 14,000 years old. It is what it is, as far as I'm concerned. Whatever you guys want to believe, you can believe. That's fine. I do believe that there's a deal, and I do believe there's an offer from the Most High. I just know that I didn't have to go through a Catholic priest to accept that offer. And I do know the difference. So please don't try to insult us with that excuse. Not good. That thing of, "I'm doing this because I'm trying to save you" crap, that's not an excuse. Anyway, anything else you want to cover, John? Otherwise, this program is going to end today.
No, so I think that covers enough for them tonight.
Alrighty, thank you for listening to the T-ROH show. We do appreciate the likes, and we do appreciate the subscriptions. Um, we're here to try to produce leaders. We need a lot of leaders within states. We don't necessarily need consumers. Okay. So we need leaders, people who are ready to take on the mantle of leading. You will not be needing our permission to do things. If you need our advice or anything of that nature, that's fine. We'll guide you the best way we know how. And if you found a better way, let us know, and we'll work with you no matter, which way you want to go. But a real republic does not necessarily lead, it produces leaders. And that's what we need. And leading does not mean I'm the biggest, baddest in town and I'm the one in charge. That's not what leading is. Leading is going by example. Make the right moves, use your head. Your brain is the best um, asset that you have. Exercise it and use it. That's what we need. We need smart people.
Leadership actually comes down to education.
Mm-hmm.
If you're leading anybody, you need to educate them so they'll know how to follow.
Right, because I follow and I lead. Do both.
Yes,
If you can't
so
follow and you can't lead, you're not a leader.
that's correct. And if when they follow for a little bit, they get enough education where they can start gradually moving into leadership.
Mm-hmm. We're not here to tear you down. We're here to break down the falsehoods that you've been taught, to change your perception, to become a good leader through education and recognizing ego, how to deal with ego, recognizing a lot of these things, what to do next, that kind of thing. So they're gonna they're always going to attack, folks. They're always going to come after the followers of the way. They're always going to do all that. Okay, that's just a given until they come to their senses. And when they do, they realize the error of their ways. Believe me, I thought the way they did a long time ago. I know the difference. I've seen both sides of the coin. And I've been there, done that. That's how I understand them. So, anyways, thank you for listening to the 60-second broadcast of the T-ROH Show. I hope you enjoyed it. And please forward this to your friends, let them listen to it, and maybe it'll start answering some questions that they've had themselves. I thought it was interesting, decided to share with everyone else. You guys, everyone, have a good week, and we will talk to you next week.